So thanks everyone for coming today. If you were at Camp Miva, you heard us talk about this, which is our new product, Miva Connect QuickBooks Online. I think technically Miva Connect QuickBooks Edition. And you see Wayne here. Historically, we've called these the Ask Waynes. Wayne hasn't gone anywhere, but from a marketing perspective, we realized that's not the best name. And so we've rebranded these as the Modern Commerce Event Series. So going forward, and we'll rename all the old Ask Waynes. So going forward, these will be called Modern Commerce Event Series, which is AKA, if you're an old Miva person, an Ask Wayne. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about our new connector to QuickBooks Online. Let's go one slide. So first thing to know about this product is it's priced in such a way to be a self-service sign-up. So you do not need to talk to a sales rep. It is something that you could just choose to purchase. There is a landing page. It is miva.com/miva-connect-QBO, as in QuickBooks Online, miva.com/miva-connect-QBO. And it really walks you through how much time can be saved and data processing errors reduced by using this product. We did some math as we were getting ready for this. So we also use QuickBooks Online. We use QuickBooks Online IES, the enterprise version. And what we found in doing a little bit of research is it takes anywhere from, call it 2 minutes if you have really simple orders, to 8 or 10 minutes if you have really complex B2B orders. And so about 5 minutes in order is the calculation we used. And then we started doing some math and we took out the outliers on each end. So people who don't process any orders because maybe they're using Miva for something different. We took out our largest 2 clients because they could throw the average up. And when you take all that out, our average store is doing 454 orders per month. That 454 orders per month times 5 minutes is 38 hours of effort. And the thing about data entry like this is not only is it 38 hours of time. I know most merchants are paying a bookkeeper or a contractor as a controller to do this work for them. So it should be a true cost savings. And most importantly, by eliminating data errors and getting it done quickly, you have an all-around integrated, seamless experience. Let's roll to the next slide. So if you're interested in signing up on your own, you can go to the webpage I just mentioned, and you can put in your email and your domain, and then you choose if you want metered or unmetered, which I'll talk about in a second. It's worth noting that while it's a self-service sign-up, it's not a self-service onboarding. So when you sign up, we will contact you within 5 days or within a week, basically, and we will log into your store, install the module, get you on a Zoom or a phone call, and we will walk you through connecting it to QuickBooks. We're going to show you this in real time in a second. We're going to walk you through connecting this to QuickBooks, help you get it configured. And for the most part, it is a once and done configuration. It is not the kind of thing that people will be tweaking very often, if ever. It does require QuickBooks Online, not desktop. So if you're using QuickBooks Desktop, your option is still Synchro, Miva Synchro, which has been around forever. It's old enough to drink now. But if you're using QuickBooks Online, which, part of the drive here and the reason we're not doing Miva Connect QuickBooks Desktop is that Intuit is trying to kill QuickBooks Desktop. They've been very public about this for years. It is a very slow burn as they migrate everyone to their cloud product. And their cloud APIs are much more suited for this. So this requires QuickBooks Online Plus Advanced, or IES, which is Enterprise. It doesn't support desktop, Essentials, and I think Simple Start is the name of the other one. So that's what it works with. That's what it doesn't work with. And the base price starts at $100 per month. So let's roll to the next slide, which covers that. So there's really 2 ways this works. For most of our merchants, the vast majority, they'll be on what we call the metered plan. It's $100 a month. That includes up to 100 orders per month. We have very real costs for hitting their API, as well as ongoing maintenance and dev costs. And then it's $75 for each additional 100 orders. So up to additional 100 orders. So if you have 150 orders, your price would be $175. If you had 220 orders, your price would be $250, et cetera, et cetera. If you're a big merchant, as in you average more than 1,300 orders a month, then the math is in your benefit to switch to unlimited. Debate internally whether we should call that unlimited or unmetered, but that's my fault because unlimited sounded better to me. And there's no cap. You can just process. And so we'll get to questions after this, but actually, is there one more slide for the ROI calculator, Nick? Yep. So one more thing is we have an ROI calculator. It'll go up on that website I mentioned in a couple days. And in this calculator, it explicitly allows you to customize it to your information. So how many orders, how much time it takes per order. So if you're just like, hey, my orders only take a minute, plug in a minute. If you're like, gosh, it takes me 10, plug in 10. How much you're paying your bookkeeper, how much time they spend closing the month trying to collect this data. Is there an error rate? How much does that cost you? And this will literally calculate exactly to the penny what your estimated savings will be. So it's a really interesting way to think about this. And then with that, I'm going to hand it to Joe for a demo.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So here we should see, I've got a development store that's connected to QuickBooks Online already. So like Rick mentioned, we do a guided onboarding process as part of this. And so the connection is very straightforward and simple. Essentially, there's a little button here that will have you click on when we do the onboarding. It'll pop up a pop-up that connects you into it, and you'll simply log into your QuickBooks Online account, and then it'll drop you right back into Miva to run through the setup wizard.
And do you want to
So
show them where this thing sits in the settings,
yeah,
on the lower left
absolutely.
here?
So what you'll do is in settings, it'll show up under utilities. You will have to click the plus button to expand the utilities menu, and there will be a new QuickBooks Online link here. Clicking that will take you to this screen that we see here. During the onboarding session, like I mentioned, it won't be connected yet. So we'll have you click the button, pop-up will come up, we'll have you log into your QuickBooks account, and then it'll take us through the guided wizard to set up the settings, essentially. We'll walk through the settings here because the other important piece with it is that you're able to change any of those settings after you do the initial setup. So if you decide, while during the onboarding, you said you wanted it one way, and then later you figure out you want it to work slightly differently, or certain data do not sync all the time, you have the ability to change any of those things afterwards. So
And if you're like I would probably be if I was in your shoes as a listener, going to your store and see if that button's there in your store, the answer is it's not. We install this module when you sign up. So
yep,
this is not default in stores. This is only there once you've gone ahead and enrolled for the product.
yep, that's correct. So on the screen here, basically what we'll see is there's some basic information about the module. You have the ability to disconnect it for whatever reason if you wanted to reconnect it. The Sync Now button will just run all of the syncing and kick off all of the scheduled task jobs that the module does for syncing orders, inventory, products, and customers. This first kind of toggle that we see down here is really just turning on the order syncing to QuickBooks Online. And it's also important to note that with order syncing turned on, because of the way that QuickBooks works, when you create an invoice in QuickBooks, you have to have the line items created as items within QuickBooks, and you have to have the customer account created as a customer within QuickBooks. So Miva will automatically handle all that for you through the connector. Anytime an order comes through, if that customer doesn't exist, it'll create the customer account in QuickBooks. If your line items don't exist, it'll create those line items in QuickBooks as well. So that creates a scenario where if all you wanted to do was turn on orders and you don't want it to sync products and customers regularly, it'll still create those products and customers that's needed for each order. It just wouldn't sync your any new customer come in that just creates an account or something like that, basically. There are some advanced options in here. So people who are coming from QuickBooks Desktop and used to using Synchro likely have this dash prefix for all of their invoices coming in already. We've kept that by default in here, but you have the ability to change that with QuickBooks Online. So if you wanted a different prefix or no prefix, you could go in here and change that. We left it dash just to keep data consistency across anyone used to QuickBooks Desktop. Then the order sources that you see here are what's controlling what orders get automatically queued to send to QuickBooks. So the way that the data syncing works is through queuing and scheduled tasks within Miva. So any new order that comes in will get queued. If you have it set to update customers or send updated product information, those will get queued as changes happen. And then when the scheduled task runs, that information will get sent over to QuickBooks. One important note, though, with orders is orders do have a trigger on the scheduled task. So anytime an order comes in, it'll automatically trigger the scheduled task. That order will go right over to QuickBooks. So there's no need to wait for the order to come through necessarily. Whereas with products, inventory, and customer syncs, those run on the scheduled task schedule, which by default is set to once per day. Moving into some of the other settings that we have here, these are all the main settings that we'll have you set up during the onboarding process. And so during onboarding, we'll ask you if you want it to regularly sync new customer accounts or customer updates. And if so, we'll have you turn this toggle on. And then the checkboxes are really what controls whether new customers are automatically sent over, whether customer changes are sent over, and bidirectionally, whether customer changes in QuickBooks make it back down into Miva. Same thing with the products. With inventory, you're simply choosing your system of record. So sometimes that's going to be Miva for merchants who want to handle all of their inventory within Miva, and Miva is the most accurate depiction of what your inventory is for your product catalog. You would choose Miva as your system of record. There may be other merchants who QuickBooks is the more accurate record for inventory. In those cases, you would want to choose QuickBooks so that QuickBooks syncs its inventory down into Miva for you. The other piece that we'll have here is some QuickBooks specific information. So with QuickBooks, there's different accounts that get created, and you simply have to link those to your asset account, expense account, and income account. When you click the lookup button on these, it'll pull the information directly from your QuickBooks account. So any accounts that you have set up in QuickBooks, if they're different than the default ones, you would be able to choose those from there. The other piece that we have access to here is the charge types. So this is really all of the mapping that exists within the connector. Anyone who's familiar with Synchro and QuickBooks Desktop might be familiar with having to map a lot of information from the product records and all of those sort of things. All of that goes away with QuickBooks Online in this connector. So the only mapping that we typically need to worry about with QuickBooks Online is the discount mapping, the handling mapping, the shipping mapping, and the tax mapping. And that's pretty much it for settings. So it's really a straightforward module to set up. Like Rick mentioned, once it's kind of connected, it just works. All of the data kind of already maps for you. One thing to note is that when we install the module, it's not going to automatically go through and queue all of your existing products to send to QuickBooks or all of your existing customers to send to QuickBooks. When you set it to send new customers or new products to QuickBooks, it's going to do that moving forward from when the module starts, but you do have the ability to manually push any product or customer data that you want. So this screen that we see here, again, just under settings, QuickBooks Online, this manual data push gives you a nice dialog window that gives you access to your product catalog, gives you access to your customers, and allows you to choose individual records and sync those individual records up to QuickBooks. And so if you had, historic product records that you wanted to push into QuickBooks, that would be a very easy way to get that data into QuickBooks. The other thing that I think is important to mention is, like I mentioned earlier, is that it works off of a queuing system and it works off of scheduled tasks within Miva. And so part of the module introduces a new custom field that can be exposed at the customer record level, the item level record, and the order level record. It's this QuickBooks Online status. If you don't have it, or you're curious how to show fields within this batch list, it's just clicking the little plus button right here. And then down here in Show Hide Custom Fields, there's a QuickBooks Online status. That will show you kind of the status of any record, whether it be products, customers, or orders, to see whether it's been synchronized, see whether it's in queue. If there was an issue with syncing the data for whatever reason, it would show you a status of either processing or unsynchronized. But this is another way that you manually have some control over data that's getting sent to QuickBooks. And so if for whatever reason you had a single product and you just happen to be on the batch list and you say, hey, I want that to be queued to send to QuickBooks, you can change that to queued. And the next time that the scheduled task runs, anything that's in that queued state is going to get sent up to QuickBooks. Kind of the last piece I'll show from the admin side is just showing off kind of where that custom field or the scheduled task is. So here,
Are we going to show pushing an order, Joe?
Yeah, so that's going to be the next piece that I push. We'll hop over to the QuickBooks side a little bit and look at some of the data on that side of things.
Great.
But yeah, so last piece from kind of the admin side here is just there's two new scheduled tasks that get created when the connector is installed. This first one you really don't need to be concerned with. This deals with the OAuth token refresh and just make sure that your session stays connected to QuickBooks. And so your store will refresh that token when it needs to, and you shouldn't need to mess with that one ever really at all. The QuickBooks Online sync, you'll see it's by default scheduled for every 1 day. This is the scheduled task that will send any queued records up to QuickBooks. And so if for whatever reason you wanted to manually fire off that task, you could come here, select it, run the scheduled task, and then anything that's queued will get sent up at that point. So like Rick mentioned, we're going to do a quick demo here. I'm going to go ahead and pop over here to another screen real quick just to get us a new order in. So you can see this order here. I just got my confirmation placed today. Essentially, we just bought a single test product from the catalog. And like I mentioned earlier, so because the order comes in and we're set to send orders, it should automatically trigger the scheduled task for us. And if we pop over here into QuickBooks and let me refresh into invoices, you can see here this 519 order for MM-1001 has come through. Keep in mind that this is a sandbox version of QuickBooks Online, so there is a lot of test data in here that they load for us automatically. But you can see there's an order here that I placed yesterday just for the purposes of testing. And then this order here came through relatively within about a minute or two of just us talking. And so we can view and edit that order. See here that it's automatically linked this to the customer record that it created for me. And it has our test product in here. And then this is where we saw some of those mapping details for the shipping and tax charges that would come through for the order. The other important piece in kind of QuickBooks that we'll see is I'll go ahead and go up here to inventory. And we can see that our test products have also synced across too. You can see it's already updated my quantity on hand for the inventory. So the inventory is syncing back and forth. That order came in, deducted from inventory. As far as product information goes, it is pretty basic product information. We'll pull across your code, your SKU, the name, and specifically price and cost is handy. Cost particularly, I think, as it relates to some of the margin awareness features that we're putting out. If merchants have their cost within QuickBooks Online already, it's relatively trivial to sync that data now back down into Miva and use that cost field within your margin awareness calculations. So I guess I'll pause there real quick. Rick, see if you had anything particular you wanted to look at further. But I mean, like we were saying, it's relatively straightforward to set up. I would say the onboarding sessions take roughly, 15 to 20 minutes for the actual setup. And of course, we leave more time for questions and talking through setup and those sort of things. But the setup tends to go really quick. And then, like Rick was mentioning, once it's set up, it kind of just works and is really nice getting the data to flow back and forth.
Yeah. So, and I'll start asking the questions that are popping into Q&A. So if you have a question, I have two things I want to talk through with Joe, but then if you have a question, type them into Q&A and we will get to all of them. Yeah, Nick, I'm going to let you share. But before you take over, Nick, I do want to point out that we can both connect to QuickBooks Production, which is obviously how you end up being connected when it's all said and done. But for those of you who have been using QuickBooks for a long time, or you want to test everything first, you can also connect to the sandbox. So you'll see Joe's on a sandbox. But if he hit disconnect right now and relogged back in, which we don't need to go through all that, but if he did all that, you would see him have an opportunity. This is how you log in. So then you'd have an opportunity to choose production or sandbox. So you certainly can test this all and make sure it's all working exactly the way you wanted it. And then once it is configured and working properly, then you would make it live in production. And to Joe's earlier point, while he's doing this is really about simplicity of data transfer and making sure it's all dialed in for automation. If you have advanced bill of materials or supply chain needs, those things become normally what you find at a full ERP. And many people use QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online. We use QuickBooks Online, so there's no shame, for lack of a better term, using QuickBooks Online. But depending on your business needs, many businesses, QuickBooks just isn't enough from a functionality standpoint, especially if you're trying to manage supply chain and cost from multiple sources. And then you would use our Miva Connect product to connect to NetSuite or Dynamics, et cetera. And then on margin awareness, before we get to the actual Q&A, margin awareness just got released a month ago, 6 weeks ago in Miva 26R1. That is the idea. And Joe, will you show a screen real quick, Joe, where it shows how people can see that? So margin awareness, Joe's correct. If you have your margin information in QuickBooks, it will sync in, which is really, really powerful. The first step is to be able to use it with the AI assistant and ask questions, and it can tell you about profitable products, et cetera, as long as that data is filled in. But the more important part, at least in my mind, is that if you're using Vexture, as well as some of the major updates coming in 26R2 slated for July, there is a whole slew of margin-aware merchandising coming, where you can promote products and drive higher margin with this data. And part of this whole story, part of this cake that we've been building, is this ability to get the data from your accounting or ERP system, store it in any way that works for you in Miva, and then actually drive real-time margin aware results in Miva. And this is a critical part of that chain. And so I think that's really exciting. Anything you need to say on this particular screen, Joe?
I don't think so. It's just it's easy to get to. It's in your catalog now. There's this new tab here called margin. We have some basic templates in here set up for simple equations, price minus cost, price minus a custom field, or if you just had a custom field value you wanted to use for margin awareness. You can also use a template if you really want to get complex with your margin awareness calculation. So again, it's another nice, easy to use feature that's been added recently.
Yeah, and then
I just
Nick
put a
just
doc.
posted.
Yeah, there's a link in there that I created for the developer docs that go through some intricacies of how it gets set up and also some use cases that you can use it for as well.
Okay, so these are two great questions already. I'll start at the top. And so this first question, there's a chance we're going back to Joe here in a second, but this first question is, I'll read what she said and then I'll interpret it in kind of Miva ease. I may have missed this, but we filter orders which go through to QuickBooks. We want to check for fraudulent orders, customer order errors, and instances to add shipping or other issues, controlling where the problem where this is possible. And the answer to that is 100%. We call that an order workflow. So Joe, do you want to show how someone might do that real quick?
Yeah. So I'll take the screen sharing back real quick just to give a quick walkthrough. Essentially, it ties in with the custom fields that I was mentioning. So a big part of order workflows is it allows you to modify custom fields on a particular order. So in a scenario like that where you don't want orders to just automatically send across to QuickBooks, what you can do is we would go back to our settings on the QuickBooks Online in this advanced section, and we would turn off the automatic queuing of orders so that they don't automatically get thrown into queue when the order's placed.
Or for example, though, in this explicit case, if you go back down there, so if you look at these, let's say manage quotes, they're always accurate because the salesperson sent the quote. Let's say review baskets is always accurate because you guys are doing it. But and subscriptions are fine, but you're really checking for fraud and customer order errors, which are done by the shopper without your involvement. So you could choose to only put the shopper ones, which is what by shopper means, into this queue, or you can put them all in the queue. You can really customize this to whatever workflow you have.
Yep, that's exactly right. So yeah, this gives you individual control over what order scenarios, get automatically queued. So in that scenario, if you just wanted to do it by the shopper, you would just deselect that one and click update. And then you would simply build an order workflow, which is a feature that we've had within the software for quite a while now. But essentially you can add a workflow here and just call this QuickBooks. We'll enable the wait until true. We'll go to next. And really what you're looking for is either an order status change or any of these criteria. Like a lot of the common ones that we've seen is, we want it to not send until the order gets shipped, basically. So you could do that easily with an order status change. You would add a condition here to look for the status. The status does use the numeric value within Miva. Our documentation has those listed out, but it basically 200 is the equivalent of shipped within our system for the numeric value. And then in this next field here, when you add an action, you have the ability to set a custom field and you have access to that QuickBooks Online status field. So you can make it to when this workflow runs, when your conditions are met, only then does it set it to queue, essentially.
Yeah, this is actually perhaps my favorite part of the way this works. Having these kind of webhook workflows between Miva and QuickBooks Online in this simple no-code interface is fantastic. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question. Next one is how are attributes and specifically attribute costs handled?
So I believe the cost is wrapped up into the simple line item itself within QuickBooks, but that it'll show the attribute details within the line item description within QuickBooks.
So and we may have to double check this, but so you think it just rolls the cost up into a total price?
Correct.
And since we were just talking about margin, it's worth commenting. We're talking price, not cost.
Price. Yes, that's correct.
The price charged to the customer. Okay. Those are two great questions, but we've only had two questions so far. Are there any other questions out there? I knew this would be a fairly quick webinar because it's a nice and slick product. But if there's any other questions, I'm going to talk here for 30 more seconds. Wayne and I might start talking about the Padres again. Anytime we're in first place, Wayne and I take our moments of celebration because we know it won't last.
Well, if I could just take a minute to sing some praises for the software team on this, and I think drive home kind of the point that you had made earlier in terms of just the ROI on a feature like this and the amount of time savings that it has. I can say that, just through our experience working with some of the beta customers on this, particularly some of the B2B use cases that we saw with this, I think B2B is one of those ones where people kind of take for granted how many line items can be in a B2B order sometimes. And you imagine it takes you, a couple minutes to go in, look up the product, add all of those records to an individual invoice within there. I mean, we had a B2B customer who had an order come through that had, dozens and dozens of line items in there, and shared with us that it effectively saved him hours of data entry with this. So having that order data come through right across like that is just a huge time savings all around that I think sometimes can get taken for granted in these systems.
Absolutely. Okay, if there's no more questions, because Joe and I, oh, hold on. If you're already paying for a compatible QBR product, I assume you mean to Intuit. So yes, you pay Intuit for QuickBooks Online, and then you pay Miva to connect to QuickBooks Online. Sadly, Intuit doesn't share. If they did, we might have a different business model. They charge us to let you connect to QuickBooks Online. Okay. Going. Let's go to one more. Cindy again. Okay. This is Dave Inglis. Cindy's name. QuickBooks limits uploads to 1,000. So actually, this is not something I'm an expert on at all. Joe, do you understand the 1,000 upload limit?
I'm not seeing the question.
So they want to do all. So it's in the Q&A, not in chat. So they want to do all of our cost and sell through Miva. I think I understand the question, which is they're saying QuickBooks Online has limits of how many uploads you could do into their system. So they want to do all the processing on the Miva side and then push in the net result to QuickBooks. Is that an accurate version of your question, Dave? Because if it is, you are not the first to use Miva. Yeah, okay, so if it is, that's great. You're not the first by any stretch to use Miva to then push the gross or net results into QuickBooks. We'll happily help you set that up live when we're doing the onboarding. And then I think the last thing I would say here, Nick, if you go to the very last screenshot, and I'll give everyone 28 minutes back, unless any last second question come in. Normally we would have our email addresses on here, but I say this, and this can sound like hyperbole, but it's true. If there's a question you have about this product, feel free to email me, rwilson@miva.com. And I will route you to the right person to get you assisted. If you have what we call an EVC, or otherwise known as an account manager, if you have one of those at Miva based on your account type, they can help you with this. But feel free to contact me, contact Wayne, and we will get you lined up with getting questions answered, getting this configured for you. And so next time I'll make sure we add our email addresses on this slide. I appreciate everyone taking time out of their Tuesday morning or early afternoon to share this with us. And we will have this on the Docs website in the next couple days.